The first sign that something was wrong was when he drove past her home. The second was when he locked the doors. The third, well, by then, it was too late. That evening, the air was thick and still, the kind that made everything feel slower. It wasn't too late, but the roads were already quiet, just a few people walking home after a long day. She had just bought a loaf of bread and a packet of milk from the shop. Nothing heavy. Just something small before heading home. A car slowed down beside her. A black Toyota Mark X, engine humming softly. The window rolled down, and a man leaned slightly toward the passenger seat. "Where are you going?" "Let me drop you." He looked decent. Well-dressed, mid-30s, wearing a white shirt. He didn't have the look of a threat. She hesitated. She had heard stories. Everyone had. But the road was long. The walk was tiring. And he was already smiling, already talking, making it sound like no big deal. "Don't worry, I just want to help." So she got in. The drive was smooth. Normal. They talked a little. He asked where she lived, and she told him. But when they reached her street, he didn't slow down. "You passed my stop," she said. "I know," he replied. "I just want to show you something first." Her stomach tightened. "No, please, I'll just get off here." "Relax." His voice was too calm. Too casual. She reached for the door handle. It didn't budge. Child lock. The realization hit her all at once. Something was very, very wrong. He drove into a gated estate, the kind of place where the air smelled expensive. Tall houses. Quiet streets. Streetlights casting long, eerie shadows. Then he pulled up in front of a mansion. 3 stories. Shining windows. A gate that opened on its own. Her chest felt tight. "Just come inside," he said. "Then I'll take you home." She didn't move. His smile disappeared. "Come inside." She had no choice. Inside, everything was too perfect. White leather couches. Glass tables. A spiral staircase that looked like it belonged in a palace. No sound. No pictures on the walls. No sign of a family. Something was wrong. She turned toward the door. He grabbed her wrist. "Sit down." Her breath caught. "Please, I just want to go home. Don't make this difficult." And then she heard it. A soft noise. A muffled cry. From upstairs. Her blood ran cold. "What was that?" she whispered. The man didn't answer. She ran. 2 men appeared from the hallway. Tall. Strong. Silent. One of them reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle. A cloth covered her nose. The world went dark. The other girls, she woke up in a small room. Cold floor. No windows. Just a single locked door. She wasn't alone. 3 other girls sat against the wall, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. One of them whispered, "They don't let anyone leave." Her heart pounded. Footsteps. The lock clicked. The door opened. The man stood there, still smiling. "You'll get used to it," he said. And then he closed the door. The door slammed shut, leaving her in suffocating silence. Her breath came in quick, sharp gasps. The other girls didn't move. They just stared. "What does he mean?" she whispered. Nobody answered. Then one of the girls, the one closest to her, spoke. "They sell us." The words hit her like a punch. She shook her head. No, this can't be happening." But the girl's hollow eyes told her it was real. Then the door unlocked. Man walked in, still smiling, saying, "You'll get used to it." He stepped aside, and someone else entered. An older man. Expensive suit. Dark eyes. He looked at her like he was choosing something. Then he nodded. "She's fresh," he said. "I'll take her." Her stomach dropped. She started to scream. But the door was already closing. Time passed. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Then the door opened again. 2 men stepped inside. Took her. She fought, kicking, but they were too strong. They dragged her down a narrow hallway, her bare feet scraping against the cold floor. She caught glimpses of other doors. Some were open. She saw girls sitting on mattresses, staring at nothing. Some doors were closed, but behind them, she could hear muffled crying. Her stomach twisted. They reached a larger room. A man was waiting. Not the rich man from earlier. Someone else. An older man. Bald. His gold watch shone under the dim light. "She's the one?" he asked, his voice deep, slow. "Yes," one of the men holding her replied. The man stepped closer, grabbing her chin roughly. He turned her face left, then right, like she was some kind of object. "She'll do," he said. Her body went cold. They dragged her into another room. Bigger. Filled with clothes, makeup, and a large bed in the center. Her mind raced. She couldn't just sit here. She had to do something. She rushed to the window. Bars. No way out. She checked the walls. No vents. No cracks. Then she spotted it on the nightstand. A small metal hairpin. Hope sparked inside her. She grabbed it, hurried to the door, and jammed the pin into the lock. Her hands shook, her heart pounded. She twisted, turned, click. The lock gave way. She pushed the door open. The hallway was empty. She took a deep breath and ran. She didn't know where she was going. She just ran. Doors blurred past her. The sound of her own breathing filled her ears. Then, voices. "She's out," someone shouted. Heavy footsteps. She turned a corner and saw a staircase. She ran down, almost tripping. She reached the bottom and darted toward the front door. Locked. Behind her, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Her eyes darted around. Then she saw another door, a smaller one to the side. Kitchen. She sprinted toward it, yanking it open. Pots. Knives. A back door. She rushed to it, twisted the handle locked. Panic shot through her. Footsteps behind her. She grabbed the first thing she saw, a heavy frying pan, and turned just as one of the men lunged at her. She swung with all her strength, the pan cracked against his skull. He dropped like a stone, but the others were coming. She spotted a knife, snatched it up. "Come closer," she hissed, her voice shaking. "I'll kill you." They hesitated, she didn't wait. She ran at them, they jumped back, startled. That was all she needed. She bolted past them, through the hallway, toward another door. This one led to a garage. She burst through, slamming it shut behind her. A car. A black SUV. The keys were in the ignition. No time to think, she jumped in. Turned the key, engine roared to life. The garage door started to open automatically. Shouts behind her. She slammed the gas. The car shot forward, crashing through the half-open gate. She was out. She didn't stop. Didn't look back. She just drove. She didn't know how long she drove. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Her hands were shaking. Her heart felt like it would burst out of her chest. Then she saw lights ahead. A small roadside shop. People. She pulled over, jumped out of the car, and ran toward them. A woman stared at her, eyes wide. "My dear, what happened?" She opened her mouth to answer. Tires screeched behind her. She turned. A black Toyota Mark X. Her stomach dropped. The man stepped out, smiling. "Come." Like he had all the time in the world, she stumbled back. "Help me," she gasped. The shopkeeper frowned. "What's wrong?" "She's confused," the man said smoothly. "She hit her head in an accident. I'm taking her home." Her blood ran cold. He was lying, and the worst part. The shopkeeper looked like she believed him. The shopkeeper hesitated, glancing between them. "She's lying," the man said again, his voice calm, too calm. "She's my sister. She ran away from home. She's not well." Lies. All lies. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her legs felt frozen. She looked at the shopkeeper, desperate. "Please, I swear, he kidnapped me. He locked me up. There are other girls." A firm grip closed around her wrist. The man. His fingers dug into her skin. His smile never faded. "She's confused." He said again. "Come on, let's go home." The shopkeeper still looked unsure. Then a man stepped forward from the small crowd. Older. Taller. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the tension. The man's grip tightened on her wrist. She saw it then, just a flicker of something in his eyes. Annoyance. A crack in his calm mask. He didn't like being questioned. That was her chance. She wrenched her arm free and stumbled back. "Help me," she screamed. "He's lying. Call the police." The older man narrowed his eyes. "Is that true?" he asked the man. A pause. A long, stretched-out silence. Then the man in the white shirt chuckled. It was low, quiet, but she could hear the danger in it. And then, before anyone could react, he lunged. Straight for her. She screamed, but the older man was faster. He grabbed the kidnapper and shoved him back. A loud thud. The crowd reacted instantly. More people jumped in, grabbing the man, pinning him down. "Call the police," someone shouted. A young boy was already dialing on his phone. The man struggled, his calm mask completely gone now. His white shirt was twisted, dirt staining the fabric. His breath came fast, angry. But she saw it, for the first time, fear in his eyes. He knew it was over. The police arrived in minutes. She barely remembered speaking. The words tumbled out of her. Everything. The car. The mansion. The locked room. The other girls. The officers listened. They took notes. Then they turned to the man. "Where's your ID?" Silence. The officer nodded. "Take him." The kidnapper didn't fight. Didn't beg. He only stared at her. And smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Like he wasn't worried. Like this wasn't the end. Her skin crawled. The officer nudged him forward. "Let's go." The last thing she heard before he was shoved into the police car was his voice, low and smooth. "This isn't over." She led the officers back to the estate. The mansion stood tall and silent, just like before. But this time, she wasn't alone. The police broke through the doors. Searched every room. They found the girls. 7 of them. Some barely conscious. Some too weak to stand. All of them trapped, just like she had been. The officers radioed for backup. More police cars arrived. Ambulances. Flashing lights filled the night. One by one, the girls were carried out. Saved. She watched, her hands still trembling, but this time, she wasn't afraid. She had made it out. And because of that, so had they. Days passed. News spread fast. The mansion was all over the media. People called it a human trafficking ring. A secret operation hidden in plain sight. The man, a kidnapper, was identified. A businessman. Wealthy. Connected. He had been doing this for years. And the worst part, he wasn't working alone. More arrests followed. More names. She stayed quiet. Watched everything unfold from a safe place. But deep down, she knew he had smiled for a reason. This wasn't over. Not really.